day, NAC TV viewers. My name is Lance Witten and welcome to our show. Now, the month of April is dedicated to sexual misconduct. And we want to inform and educate you on exactly what your rights are. Now, joining me today to give us some in-depth insight into the topic of sexual misconduct is Mervyn Doralingo. And we thank Mervyn for his time, for joining us here today. Mervyn, welcome.
Thank you, Lance. Good day to you and the NAC TV viewers.
So Mervyn, we often hear about sexual misconduct in the media. What exactly does this term mean?
Yeah, sexual misconduct is a little bit of a touchy one in the sense that its definition is still being debated. However, it has an umbrella sort of reference to it as being any behavior that is unacceptable and that has the impact of making another person feel uncomfortable. So typically, it would make a person feel that what is happening to him or her is unwelcome in its very essence. And it can happen not only by force, but it could also be subtle gestures without consent. And it's often perpetrated by people of opposite sex or opposite gender, but it could very well be of the same gender, and any gender could perpetrate it. Perhaps a few examples: sexual harassment, rape, and sexual molestation, and perhaps on the more quieter, subtle side is sexual exploitation. So that more or less sums up the definition of sexual misconduct.
Now, Mervyn, I can understand that there are very interesting subtleties also to this. I mean, it could be as simple as a comment that gets made to someone, but the essence of it, I feel, is it makes me feel uncomfortable. I'm not comfortable. And you mentioned that word consent, which is such an important word. Is how subtle and how broad can the term sexual misconduct be applied to things like inappropriate comments that just make me feel uncomfortable?
Yeah. Often and I want to call the person who does the sexual misconduct for now the perpetrator. It is often someone who has thought through what he or she plans to do, and often the gestures would, in the normal course of events, appear in order. But I think it's important that we understand that it's about the individual and how he or she perceives those advances. And I think also critical for individuals to make known that they are uncomfortable. So that, yeah, one has got to almost look deeper and look beyond or behind what is being portrayed, as that often amounts to some inappropriate sexual advance.
How does one go about broaching this topic? You may be acting in a way that I feel is inappropriate, but what if I don't feel comfortable raising that with you directly?
Yeah, Lance, I think that is the difficulty with sexual misconduct, because victims often feel afraid and they would not raise it because there's also the societal the concern of how will society perceive my case should I now raise it, because often the situation is that you look at how will people see me, how will they perceive me, and I think it's important that one understand that there's the obligation on the individual to simply take a stance and then make alarm where appropriate.
It's very difficult, as you mentioned, because society today, we almost place the burden of proof on the victim, and we know in our culture, in a South African sense, gender-based violence is a big issue. The question is often asked, what did you do to invite this to yourself? But I think it's a valid point that you make, that this person is a perpetrator, someone who has actually put into action these comments that build up to something else.
Yeah. I think perhaps when you consider the let's call it advances, that when that is considered, one would not find that the perpetrator would make it obvious. The perpetrator would almost make it normal, like I said, in a subtle way, that look, actually what you sort of wanting to complain about, this is often their reaction. What you're complaining about is actually not that difficult. I mean, it's normal for me to behave like that. But again, I want to emphasize it's how you react. And I think, given especially South Africa, you spoke about the culture of gender-based violence, that one must almost be assertive and not allow that, because it happens in various shapes and forms. Especially amongst children, we want to create that awareness that children must also be on the lookout for this type of behavior towards them.
How would I, as a child, know what my rights are? And if I feel that my rights are being impinged upon, who do I talk to? Who do I raise this with first?
Yeah. That's a key one, because most of the children don't have a voice, and it is imperative on parents to really be alert and aware, looking at the behavior responses of the children, because if children aren't made aware of the possibilities of where they could go and where they could find help, then that becomes another situation where the child is silenced. And perhaps for the viewers, for the adult viewers, it's important that when you have been violated or offended, there's a few things that you can do, few places that you can go. And perhaps the first one is immediately move to a safe place. In that regard, one would typically refer to the police station, where you would want the victim to move as soon as possible, whenever there's an opportunity to do that. And then for the children especially, we want to encourage them to tell someone, and perhaps tell someone that you trust. It's very important in the context to now remember that person would even become, in legal terms, the first report. So normally they would be called as a witness and to testify about what would have happened. So the other avenue of escape or area where you can find safety is to seek medical help as soon as possible, because often a rape victim has, if you do not move immediately within, I think the norm is now 72 hours, so that you can avoid being infected by HIV. Also, go to a doctor, go to a hospital, because the hospitals, some of the public hospitals, in supporting the framework of government and it's enabling the almost the fight against rape and sexual assault, has now created the Tutuzela centers. And these centers are equipped with brilliant doctors. You have access to immediate forensic examinations, which becomes critical for, should the matter go to court, for the case then to have good evidence. So yeah, that, and then perhaps the one that we often overlook is to simply approach your partner. So yeah, Lance, those are some of the examples of, you know, where, what and how for children especially.
Yeah, I think when it comes to children, what we need to, as parents and as adult members as well, need to also make children feel safe and secure enough that the moment you feel uncomfortable, say something about it. Don't wait. Don't think that, this is just a small thing, you know, because the potential for something to advance is always there.
Yeah, Lance, we've experienced and have read many accounts of perhaps the child thinking that the gesture is done innocently, or it is done with a view to reach out a hand of friendship. But in many cases, the trauma that has resulted from just the inability to have, number one, identified what is happening, number two, to make alarm, number three, then to take action. It resulted in severe trauma even over many years by no action or no alarm being made by that first touch or gesture or occasion.
So, Mervyn, we've spoken about children and how vulnerable they are. Obviously, there is quite an important burden of responsibility for adults to report any cases of abuse of children, be it sexual, be it physical, even verbal. Would you like to comment on that?
Yes, Lance. Yeah, I think thanks for raising that, because so often we say that children should be seen and not heard, and the duty is in law that if any person becomes aware of the abuse, assault, especially sexual assault of a child, that you have to report it to the police. You can also report it to a social worker or a body dealing with social work matters. And then importantly, often people don't know where to go. So it's perhaps easy that you then go to the minister, to the rector, and inform him, and he can then also assist that member to guide them in terms of where to go to raise the alarm as well.
As a hypothetical question, I am a Sunday school teacher, and one of the children in my care, I suspect that there may be any kind of abuse going on with that child. How do I raise that? Do I speak to my rector then about that and get his guidance?
That is a possibility, but what the church has done was to create the Safeguarding Facilitators Committee. So that person then becomes the complainant, and the complainant can then, on behalf of the child, raise the issue with the committee, and the committee would then initiate the appointment of an investigator. And the committee has got very good expertise. We have some social workers on the committee, there's some psychologists, and they will guide processes, and even where practical, feasible, advisable, refer the matter directly to the police.
Mervyn, let's move this to a church context.
Sure.
The church obviously has a policy in place around sexual misconduct. Can you shed some light on that policy?
Yeah. What is great about the let's call it the creation of the policy was a realization by the church that the pastoral care, let's call it program, that the church offer does not always address issues of sexual misconduct. And because of that, let's call it almost a lacuna, a gap, the church then was of the view that it had to develop a specific framework. And it is important because one must also understand that pastoral care does not always necessarily mean that the person who does that care is equipped to deal with issues of sexual misconduct. And in that case, the perpetrator, and more specifically the victim, requires special care, special attention. And the policy that was formulated has now actually come to the aid of many already. And what is great about the surrounds of the policy is that there are many professionals involved. We have social workers, we have psychologists, there's some legally qualified people involved, legal professionals. So that is all in aid of supporting and protecting the victim. And the ultimate idea is that we eradicate sexual misconduct and that all members are protected through the policy.
No, that's wonderful. That really is wonderful to hear that there is a policy and that it does include so many active professionals in the drafting and the upkeep thereof. If we look at it again from a church perspective, from a church context, what do I do if I feel I have been approached sexually, if I've had comments that make me feel uncomfortable within a church context? Who do I report it to? Who do I speak to? What kind of support does the church and my congregation offer me?
Yeah, Lance, that's very important because firstly there should be an enabling and a comfortable environment for us to, I nearly wanted to say, to police sexual misconduct, because the church firstly has made sure that there's the message that each and every instance or case will be dealt with in extreme confidence, because you can just imagine that would be for a victim one of the first requirements. In fact, it might be one of the biggest concerns. Will my matter be treated confidentially? And that the church, through the policy, guarantees, and that coupled with the confidentiality is the issue of empathy, so that there is the feeling that goes with the understanding what you've gone through is difficult and it's tough. So the church has gone slightly further with the policy and made it obligatory for anybody who is involved in the sexual misconduct sphere to if you're a facilitator, that you will have to be vetted. So you amongst other things also have to sign a non-disclosure agreement with the church. And in addition to the non-disclosure agreement, there's also the criminal background checks that has been done. And that is not only for the facilitators, it includes apostles, bishops, and the district apostle. So that's the extent that the church went to make sure that the matters are being dealt with confidentially.
Okay. Do I report instances of sexual misconduct to my rector, to my priest, to the apostle? What kind of levels would I need to, if I do feel that I need to report something?
So Lance, it is envisaged, because remember, the policy might not be able to guide on every situation, but generally it is understood that such a complaint will be leveled at the rector, be addressed with the rector, who will then in turn speak to the apostle. It could also be that a member can go and complain directly with the apostle. In the event that the member is uncomfortable to speak to an individual, we also have created a dedicated email address And that email address makes it possible for any person to lay or lodge his or her complaint. And the email address is, we've also made it simple. It's report SM, so it's report SM at nac-sa.org.za. So there is a portal, and it's only manned, or have the people who have access as members of the safeguarding committee. So it's password protected. So someone, if you are not comfortable to speak to a minister, then you could access it via the email address. What's also been made comfortable, the church has the Living Benefits program. Members that belong to the burial fund would have over years now become acquainted with that helpline. So you could then, when you phone in, and I'll give the number in a moment, you could phone into the Living Benefits helpline, and then when you speak to the counsellor there, you, the complainant, can then give the counsellor permission to lodge the complaint on your behalf. So that's a great mechanism, because a complainant might not always want to directly lodge their complaint. So that number is 086 00 00 500. So I'm going to make it a little bit easier. It's 0860 500. So the members could then, the complainant could then give a counsellor permission. Then, for further information, the church has also made the website available, so that if you need to learn a little bit more, maybe look at the procedures, which I think might also be an important one that we may want to reflect on, so that the members have awareness. So then you access the church's website, also www.nac-sa.org.za. So on the website you can find the policy, download the policy, and then get guidance in terms of how you could proceed.
If I wanted to become involved in this safeguarding committee, if I feel that I want to take action, I would like to assist and join this committee, how do I go about doing that?
Yeah, Lance, that's always very welcome, because I think we sometimes underestimate the appearance, it's commonly called the scourge of gender-based violence and sexual misconduct. So help and support is always needed. The one benefit that would accrue to someone who's willing to help is that you will have to be trained. All facilitators, safeguarding facilitators have been trained, and it is an accredited South African Qualifications Authority training that you undergo. So you have to be trained first of all. You would approach your local leader, perhaps the rector, and then the rector would refer you to the apostle, and then there's the Safeguarding Facilitators Committee. That committee would then initiate your participation. But workers and helpers always welcome.
Oh, that's fantastic. Is there anything else that I may have missed that you want to touch on?
I thought it might be important to just briefly mention to the members the steps and the processes, because we have two tiers or two processes in which you can refer your complaint. So we have an informal process and a formal process. The informal process, you would simply lodge your complaint with your rector. The rector will inform the apostle. The apostle will then appoint a mediator. So a mediator will then get the two parties together. The purpose of that session would be to try and find a way to resolve the conflict. And mediators typically, Lance, you've asked, how do I get involved? It does not necessarily have to be a minister. So a mediator could be a member who has interest, qualifications in dispute resolution, such as mediation training. The mediator could also be someone who's got a legal qualification, or someone who works in the sphere of sexual misconduct and involved in gender-based violence. So there's another avenue, but that is in the process of the mediation where such a person could be involved. But as soon as the mediation session happens, the purpose is then to mediate, get a resolution to the satisfaction of both parties. And then the second process is the formal one. And that one is also documented in the policy. And the way it works, it's basically driven out of the office of the district apostle, so that once the complaint has been filed, the district apostle, in consultation or after discussion with the apostle, would then appoint an investigator. So now you can hear this one is a little bit more serious and a little bit more busy. So because the investigator then has the obligation to call in or let me say, to gather as much evidence by then calling in the complainant. He may even call in the respondent or the perpetrator, as we would freely want to call it. All other witnesses must be or will be interrogated, and whatever available evidence is there will be then compiled into a report. That report, done within 30 days of the investigator's appointment, would then be submitted to the Sexual Misconduct Committee. We've decided that name must have a softer ring. So it's now called the Safeguarding Facilitators Committee. So that committee will then review the investigation and then make a recommendation to the office of the district apostle. And that more or less sums up, Lance, I thought was important for the members to know how do we access and what will happen in terms of them, so that they have that awareness. So thank you for that opportunity.
I think it's quite interesting, you mentioned these two processes, and I quite like the second process in that I don't have to face the person that I am accusing of sexual misconduct. I don't need to face the person who's perpetrated this act against me, which I think is quite important as well.
Very important. And Lance, the one interesting thing about that comment is that we've seen on more than one occasion where the victim actually asked to be face to face with that person, and in many cases it helped to get closure. So yes, that will purely be from the request or at the request of the complainant. And I think also important is that you don't have the victim don't have to be bound by the formal or the informal procedure. You may go directly to the police, for example.
Now, what if I'm not comfortable mixing my congregation life with my personal life? I don't want to, I may feel like I've been wronged by a fellow member or by a minister, but I don't want to involve the church. What other places can I go for help?
Lance, I think it's important for us to stress that the framework and the environment has been created so that sexual misconduct is addressed. And there is absolutely no offense if it's not addressed within the church environment. In fact, it's really about the comfort, the at peaceness, I want to call it, of the victim. So the church has over many years established various relationships with multiple organizations. So a member could typically directly approach a rape crisis. They can go to Lifeline. There's also NICRO and FAMSA. So there's many organizations that a member or a victim can approach. And then I think I want to underline, as much as the policy is there and the framework has been established, the victim must feel comfortable with the help and where she or she would want to get help from.
All right. No, thank you very much, Mervyn. That was wonderful, very informative, and I really am encouraged at the fact that the New Apostolic Church has put this safeguarding committee in place to manage these kinds of things. Thank you very much, Mervyn.
Absolute pleasure, Lance, and we hope that there would be this great awareness about the work that the safeguarding facilitators are doing, and the access and protection that there is for our members.
If you do need any more information, you can visit our church's website. It's www.nac-sa.org.za. The sexual misconduct policy is on there as well. You can also find all of the steps that you need to take if you do feel like you have been wronged. But in all things, please do be safe and speak out when you do see something or feel something that makes you uncomfortable. Mervyn Doralingo, thank you so much for your time. My name is Lance Witten. We'll catch you next time.